guys, this is Christine.
Hey!
And she's like my best friend ever, and she's on the soccer team with me at Biola. Do you want to share just like a few things about yourself?
Yeah, okay, no giggles.
No giggles.
Hold on. Yeah, so hi guys, I'm Christine. I am 19. I'm gonna be 20 in November. I have a lovely boyfriend who goes to CBU. I love to draw and paint, and I really love Jesus.
Okay, so we wanted to make a video on kind of just like the basics of like starting out your faith and what we believe and you know what the gospel is, I guess. So.
Yeah, because we know it can be really confusing sometimes, especially when everybody around you knows what's going on, but you don't. I mean, I didn't learn exactly what the gospel was until literally last year. So we just wanted to make this video, like Mason said, just to break down what the gospel is and to answer some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will start off with what is the gospel. You know, this is kind of like the essence of what we believe and what Christianity is. So it starts off with, and button whenever you want to say anything. But yeah, it starts off when Adam and Eve were on earth. Like God designed humans to be in fellowship with God. And the problem with that though was that there was sin and that separated us from God. And since God is so perfect, sin cannot be in his presence like at all. And so sin's not okay. And there's now like there's a penalty now for sin. And that penalty has to be paid. But this was paid on the cross, and this is what Christ's sacrifice was for us and like why it's so important, because he paid that for us.
Yeah, so to break that down, like what is sin? And so I think according to God's word, sin is when we aren't reflecting Jesus.
That's good.
And so that's why it's so important to be looking to God's word, because we can see all of the things that Jesus is. That's what we are called to be. So sin can fall under a whole bunch of different things. Sin can be stealing, it can be having sex outside of marriage, or it can be something small that we think is small, like lying, or what else? Pride, or deceit. Anything of evil intention, like even if you're thinking of yourself instead of others, things like that. So anything that isn't like Jesus.
Yeah.
So what is that price that Christ paid? Like, what does that even mean? And so the heart of the gospel in the Bible is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I didn't know that either. So that's the gospel in the Bible. And the gist of it is that God sent his son, his precious son. I mean, think of it in terms of a father and his son. That's what it was. God sent his son down to earth, coming from a sinless, beautiful place where God is exalted and where he reigns, and coming down to earth where it's full of sin, full of brokenness, super corrupt. He sent his son down here for us to walk among all of the brokenness. So when Jesus came, he called everybody, like the fishermen. Back then, fishermen were the lowest people in society. He hung out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. Everybody shunned the tax collectors because they were, taking everybody's money. And Jesus hung out with them and called them and said, I choose you, follow me. And to fulfill God's promise to the world, Jesus was crucified on the cross. We know that when the nails were dug into his hands, Jesus took on the sin and weight of the world. And I know that's something that gets thrown around a lot, but really think about that. Like all of generations, the generations before, the generations during, and the generations after, like Mason and I, you and I, right now, God took on the weight of our sin. And you guys could imagine when we do act in sin, like if we do lie or if we do steal or whatever that is, you feel that guilt, that shame. But imagine that multiplied by everybody that has ever lived and will live. And that was placed on Jesus' shoulders. So the weight of sin, and then on top of that, the weight of actually being crucified to a cross. So when when Jesus was crucified, that was God's ultimate sacrifice so that we could be saved. Jesus died on our behalf so that we don't have to die because of our sin.
Yeah, so kind of to condense that, God sent his son down and he lived a perfect life and died for us because honestly we were supposed to deserve that death, but he took that. And so now what that death was gives us the opportunity to live in heaven forever and have a relationship with Jesus. And because Jesus paid that price, since sin is so terrible in God's eyes, there's a penalty and a cost, and Jesus paid that cost for us when he died. So now salvation is a free gift, and we either accept it or we don't. So, on the third day after Jesus was sacrificed, he rose from the dead, and I'm sure you guys all know that, with Easter and everything. But, what's so amazing about that and powerful is that he literally defeated death, and that just shows, if he can defeat death, he can defeat anything. And every little thing that we worry about, it's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you worrying? I literally defeated death, And because of that death and then the resurrection, we now have abundant life. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so what's the resurrection?
It's Jesus rising from the dead and defeating death and then going back up to heaven to chill with his homies.
Yeah.
My brother's so gonna make fun of me for that.
Yeah, after Jesus went up there, he's chilling with his homies now, and we're just waiting. We're waiting for him his second coming. So while we're waiting, we're glorifying him, baby.
That was like the sunshine coming through when he comes down.
I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, okay. So what does salvation mean?
What salvation is putting God as the Lord of your life and living for him the rest of your days, and then entering heaven with him in his glory. So
spending forever with him.
Yes!
Which is super exciting.
Okay, so like how do you get saved, And like I had mentioned earlier, salvation is a free gift, and what that looks like is just a simple prayer. It's first acknowledging what Jesus did for us and that sacrifice or that death was true and it happened. And then, acknowledging and understanding what that gospel was. Yes, and then recognizing that we are sinful people and that we need Jesus and we need that salvation to enter heaven.
Yeah.
And then lastly, it's just living out this and living for Jesus every day and constantly denying ourselves and humbling ourselves before the Lord and living out what Jesus exemplified when he was on earth.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And then that reminds me of a verse in Matthew 16:24. It says, "Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." And then verse 26 says, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul?" So good. And so basically, going off of what Mason said, what Jesus is saying is denying yourself daily. We're so being born into a sinful world. Our nature is sin. Our nature is to choose to get angry at that person. Our nature is to choose to be impatient. Our nature is to lie because that's just what we do, and because we're sinful. And so what Jesus is saying is to deny that part of ourself, or to deny our flesh, and to take up our own cross and follow the Lord.
Yeah. So meaning the taking up your cross, meaning what that means is, denying our fleshly desires and sacrificing what we want as sinful humans, and instead desiring what Jesus desires for our lives.
Which is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's what we're called to do. And the Lord honors that.
Yeah. But I think it's also important to know that you can never do enough to enter heaven, and you can never do enough good deeds or be a good enough person. You know, it's not enough to just be a good person to enter heaven.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to know, because we never will be. And, you know, that's what's so beautiful about God's grace and his sacrifice.
Yeah, because we don't deserve any of this.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do that can get us into heaven and spend eternity with the Lord. The only way that we're spending eternity with the Lord is through his grace. That's it. Because he loves us that much that he wants to spend forever with us. So like Mason was saying, there's nothing that we can do. We can't be, you know, a good enough person or whatever. It has nothing to do with deeds, although the Lord calls us to do everything we can to reflect him. We're broken, and we'll never match up to that.
Yeah. So that's all we have for you guys today, and I really hope that this helped and you guys learned a lot.
We just wanted to get back to the basics.
Yeah.
And just kind of break down the simple gospel.
Yep. Thank you guys for watching. Love you.
Love you.